Hi, I'm Sharon, psychologist at Mysterious Minds. ഇന്ന് നമ്മൾ നോക്കുന്നത് PTSD എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ ഡിസോർഡറിലാണ്. So PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. It is a disorder that develops when an individual faces with a very threatening stimuli or a very fearful stimuli. And ആ stimuli മൂവ് ചെയ്ത് കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ടും ആ സിറ്റുവേഷനിൽ നിന്ന് മാറി കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ടും യു ആർ നോട്ട് ഏബിൾ ടു റിക്കവർ, യു ആർ നോട്ട് ഏബിൾ ടു ഫങ്ഷൻ നോർമലി ഓർ പ്രീമോബിളി. നേരത്തെ ഫങ്ഷൻ ചെയ്ത പോലെ ഇപ്പോൾ ഫങ്ഷൻ ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുന്നില്ല. ആൻഡ് കൂടുതൽ നമ്മളിത് കാണുന്നത് ഇസ് വിത്ത് ആർമി മെമ്പേഴ്സ്, വാർ വെറ്ററൻസ് ആൻഡ് individuals who've been in car accidents or something that is very catastrophic, where avaru vicharichu, okay, I'm going to die, or something was so fearful for them, they're still scared. So the effects of what they faced when they faced the stressor is still being carried on. So when that comes for a certain period of time, that is when we would usually diagnose saying PTSD diagnosis. Coming to different symptoms of PTSD, we have one is the major thing that we see is intrusive symptoms. That is, the individual keeps reliving the situation again and again. If we have watched a lot of army movies, we see, the individual still keeps shaking vigorously like they're in that field, in the place that they experience this stressor. Or there's constant dreams about this particular situation. Only when we're all sitting together, the individual will start manifesting or convulsing or acting as if they are still in that particular situation. It can be when they're sleeping. Suddenly they're shaking a lot. Suddenly they're reliving the whole situation as if it's happening. So these are mainly intrusive thoughts. If you're casually taking a walk and something reminds you of that particular situation where you had the stressor, you will again start reliving. So these are called intrusive symptoms because they are intruding your daily life. They're not allowing you to move forward. Pinna nammal kanna vera symptoms. One is mood, and mainly negative mood. The individual will find it difficult to stay positive, difficult to stay happy. They might have fits of anger. Their mood will change from, being happy to sad very quickly. So these are also the kind of mood symptoms that we'll see for an individual who's undergone or who's been diagnosed with PTSD. Otherwise, we also have dissociative symptoms. Dissociative symptoms are like flashbacks. Again, instead of being present in the current moment, they'll keep reverting back to that particular time, that particular period. So there are times where we might have to shake them out of that particular situation to show that they are in the present. It is no longer there. And that is usually how family members, help them tap out of going back to that stage that you're currently here. It's not happening. This we can also see for individuals who've gone through abuse, physical, emotional, sexual abuse. They sometimes, especially through dreams or at night, they'll start reliving the situation. They'll start crying violently, convulsing violently. All of those are undealt symptoms or undealt emotions that are coming up now. Another thing that we can see is avoidance symptoms. Avoidance symptoms, they don't want to interact with people anymore. They don't want to go to places that reminded them of this stressor or this life-threatening experience. So there's a lot of avoidance. They might stop doing activities that they once did, pleasurable activities. So the final symptom that we can look into is arousal symptoms. In arousal symptoms, they're always on the edge. What is going to happen? Or they're very hypervigilant. If we tap them from the back, suddenly they might, violently react. They'll startle payingaraita. Rather than a normal reaction, they'll react more than what the situation demands. Because, again, that emotion has not been dealt with. They're constantly might be shifting from the past to the present, to the past to the present. So they're hypervigilant, always looking out for the next danger or reliving this existing danger. When we come to what causes PTSD, there is usually a very life-threatening situation, a very catastrophic situation that has shaken the individual to the core, to say it normally. It has shaken them so much that they can't come out of it. Even after days or after months, they're still reliving it. So usually when a situation like this happens, and naturally we would expect there are a lot of crying spells, there is a lot of change in mood, there is also, like we said, avoidance symptoms, arousal symptoms, dissociative symptoms. If it is present only for a span of 4 weeks or a month, we would usually say it's an acute stress disorder. Okay? It does not move on to PTSD. Pakshe, if the symptoms come up later on, it persists later on, or sometimes there's a chance that the stressor might happen and the individual will be normal for a month. But after a month or a month and a half, now these symptoms of mood variations, of dissociative symptoms, arousal are all coming up. That is when it's likely to be diagnosed as PTSD. Allengil, it's usually an acute stress disorder and the symptoms will relieve after a month. It does not persist longer. There are many theories as to why this happens. A lot of them do say, the emotions that you had, the fear that you had, it's not processed. Because something is not processed, it's carried on to the future. It's carried on to further situations. There are also theories that says that the individual can't move forward. The individual is literally caught up in that time. So to orient them back to reality, orient them back to the present, it takes a lot of time. So there are a lot of therapies that do deal with it. But one thing we look into when we diagnose PTSD is it always co-occurs with, majority of the time, it co-occurs with another mental illness, mainly anxiety or depression. Because we already parnchu symptoms of avoidance. The individual, cuts themselves completely off from their social circles, activities that they enjoyed before. So all of that is slowly putting the individual in a depressive mode. And when we talk about hypervigilance, arousal symptoms, they are always anxious, looking out so that nothing bad will happen to them. So, we are anxious, we are hypervigilant, a lot of, the systems in our body is like on alert. And to be in that state of alertness for a constant period of time eventually develops into like anxiety disorders. So, when we do diagnose PTSD, we also look into these other mental illnesses that could be comorbid along with PTSD. So, in terms of pharmacology, in terms of medications, we do give it for depression. We try to manage anxiety. We try to manage these side effects. And mainly for psychological therapies, there is a little bit of exposure therapy. Again, that is exposure therapy. You're bringing that individual back to the anxiety-causing situation. But at the same time, you're helping them understand this is not reality. You're in the present. Another therapy that we use is EMDR. Again, it has to do a lot with eye movement. At the same time, you're hoping that the individual is processing that, undealt emotion, that undealt fear. Another reason why we might see the individual pettina convulsing, pettina reacting in a certain situation is because our fear, whatever they felt during that particular situation, they associated to different elements. There's a generalization. For example, let's take car accident. The individual was in a traumatic car accident and it scarred their memory. It's like, shaken them to the core. So next time, roadlu nadakuma, if a car, swishes by them, that they might start reacting in a very fearful manner. In the same way they reacted when the real situation happened. So through exposure therapy, through EMDR, what we try to do is we're trying to expose them through the situation and show them, Oru Rasham Patya doesn't mean it has to happen. We're trying to stop that generalization. So those are the ways in which we usually move ahead with PTSD. Again, it is done with the help of a certified clinician and it is not something that we would recommend you try it out by yourself. But usually in traumatic cases, there are high chances it can develop to PTSD or else it can be ASD, acute stress disorder, and symptoms will just dissolve in time. So that is it with PTSD. This is Sharon Joseph signing off.